So what we'll do now is we'll move on to our next session, which is we're going to be joined by Susie Stannard from AHDB and Rachel Knowles from Trink Dairy. Now, Rachel and Susie are going to discuss communicating with consumers from farm to fridge. So Susie has spent the last 19 years in the market research industry, focusing on consumer insight. For the past 2 years, where I know her from is working for AHDB, and within the consumer and retail insight team, she's focusing there on leading insight into the dairy sector. Now, for Rachel, I've been very fortunate that I've actually visited Rachel's farm down in the southwest. She actually said call in if you were passing, but I don't know how often you pass St Ives, so we made a special trip and it was well worth it. Rachel's the director of Trink Dairy along with her husband in Cornwall, pasteurising and bottling their own milk from their grass-fed cows. They sell their produce throughout the southwest and as well as from the farm gate, which is where I actually visited and saw everything going on. They've got a vending machine there. Rachel's really, really passionate about producing a high quality product, and her welfare and her cows' happiness, of which I have witnessed, and she's very popular for this in the local community. Lovely, lovely lady. And so I will hand you over now. Welcome Susie and welcome Rachel. Can we see you there?
Can you see me?
I can see Susie. I can't see Rachel at the moment. Hello, there's Rachel. Hi, Rachel. Hi. Okay, Rachel, can you just take yourself off mute, please, for us? Okay, super. Morning, morning, ladies. So welcome to our 7th Women in Dairy. Sorry, it's a virtual annual conference at the moment, but hey ho. So I will now hand over to you and let's hear what you've got to discuss. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I'm kicking off and then handing over to Rachel. So I'm going to share some slides with you. So hopefully we can you see those? I'm hoping so.
Yes, we can see those. Thank you, Susie.
Fantastic. Okay, so good morning and welcome to everybody. I'm really delighted really to have this opportunity to come and speak to you all. And like everybody else, I sort of vaguely hoped at one point we might be doing it face to face, but it wasn't to be. But thank goodness for technology. So we're going to be talking this morning about communication, and I'm really going to be talking about how we communicate with consumers. So my role within AHDB is within the retail and consumer insight team. There's 6 of us, and we spend our days just really thinking about consumers, what drives them, what motivates them, what their attitudes are, what they're buying, how they're buying it, how they're using it in their kind of day-to-day lives. So I really want to share some of those kind of insights with you and highlight some of the challenges that consumers are facing, and then also what are some of the things that we are doing about some of the communications that we're having with consumers. And it's really about how we tell the dairy story, and that dairy story is a great one. In some ways, it's really a magic trick. It's a sleight of hand, as the cow, who's really our hero in this story, takes the food that we can't eat, so all the grass that's growing on your farms, and turns it into a really amazing food, which in its turn can be turned into many different diverse and wonderful products. And it's also really a story of how you guys as farmers and processors work really hard to deliver that product to consumers. And it's also a story of people themselves, how they consume this wonderful product, really from cradle, from birth in some cases, or from being very young children through to death, helping our bodies stay healthy. But we know that story has been twisted in some ways and distorted, and people have cast aspersions both on how we produce the milk, on its healthiness, and how that impacts on the planet. So one of our roles within the dairy sector at AHDB is to understand those dynamics and to provide some communications to balance out some of that negativity, and to retell the story of dairy to consumers in a more positive way. So I'd like to share with you today some of the insights that sit behind that, and also some of the campaign work that we've been doing. So I'm going to start off by looking at what some of the key challenges are for dairy and its consumers, in terms of how the end consumers feel. And I just want to kind of cast our minds back to 2 years ago and even longer ago. So life before COVID, what were we seeing then? We were tending to see, dairy's hugely important to a lot of people at that point. We had kind of 98% household penetration, so it's in everybody's shopping basket, right? But we were starting to see a little bit of decline, and that was kind of unconscious. So, and it's not happening to a large extent. So it equated really, if we're looking at liquid milk, to a loss of 8 litres per buyer per annum, which is not a huge amount, but we were just starting to see this gradual erosion. And a lot of that was unconscious. So people were maybe reducing a bit of dairy consumption, but not even realising they're doing it. And we sort of thought about it in this way, in that dairy had become a bit of like an old marriage where partners have started taking each other for granted. So, it's always there, it's always part of your fridge, but you kind of not really thinking about the benefits of it. And then when something new and shiny comes along, people, such as alternatives, people were sort of thinking, oh, what's that, and picking up things. And some of that reduction was happening because just things like changing lifestyle or change in host foods that people were consuming. So for example, people starting to have less hot drinks that would have milk in them, so less traditional kind of your cup of tea or less coffee, bringing in things like herbal teas, for example, that don't have milk. So there was just this kind of gradual erosion going on that needed countering. And we really needed to remind people why dairy was so good. Now, if we kind of flip forward to the COVID time, so in 2020, you can see there's this reversal of fortunes for dairy. So in 2019, total dairy was in that slight decline in volume terms, so minus 1.2%. So when COVID hit, all of a sudden, everybody's at home all the time. They're having to buy all their food and drink for consumption at home, and we saw a really kind of strong uplift in dairy purchasing and in dairy consumption. So total dairy went up by 7.6%, milk up by 6.5%. The sorts of products that did incredibly well were things like butter and cream. We all saw, as people didn't have anything to do during lockdown, everyone was doing home baking, resurgence of scratch cooking. So that really kind of explains some of that. And then also things like cheese and butter as well, because people weren't going out to work and people weren't getting out to school, which meant that they were making a lot of sandwiches and things like that, which meant that cheese and butter doing super well. But the flip side of that was the loss of food service. So we all saw, if you look at the graph looking at hot drinks out of home sales, we saw that sort of drop off completely in the March, April, as all those outlets kind of closed down. And then we saw sales starting to pick back up over the summer. And looking forward to this year in 2021, we've seen a massive lift versus last year, unsurprisingly. However, versus the same time period kind of 2 years ago, the sector is still down considerably, by about a fifth in food service, and looking at total food service. And if we kind of look at a 12-week period, so looking at the last 3 months, what's happening with dairy sales, you can see a bit of a reversal of the sorts of changes that meant products did really well during the lockdown period. So those kind of more indulgent products like double cream, like butter, not performing as well this year. And that's really because people have stopped baking, so they're a bit sick of baking. People are scratch cooking a bit less as people have started to go back to work. They're kind of looking for convenience and things like that again. And the products which are performing a bit better are things like yogurt, where people are starting to think about health a bit harder again. Before it was all about kind of enjoyment and indulgence, and things like milk as well, but volumes down in the past 12 weeks. So certainly in retail anyway. And the other thing that we're kind of looking at is attitude. So what's happened to those attitudes? So prior to the pandemic, we were getting a lot of negative news, a lot of negative press. Quite a lot of people were saying that they wanted to cut back on their dairy consumption. People do tend to say they're going to do things and then actually don't when you look at their food purchasing, but it's still a good indication of kind of what's going on in people's minds. So the latest data we have, we've got about 1 in 4 people who say that something lately has made them think about cutting back on dairy products, and that started to edge up. So during the pandemic, that urge to cut back was quite suppressed. I think people wanted the comfort of familiar things and weren't cutting back, but that cutting back is starting to come back in again. And some of the reasons behind that are really important to think about, because they're the sorts of things that we need to address via communication. So the top reasons that people have for cutting back on dairy products at the moment are environmental concerns, animal welfare concerns, just the availability of alternatives, so that if they do have these concerns, they've got, you know, somewhere else to go, and health concerns. And I think it's really important that we kind of think about those. There's been quite a lot of change, interestingly. When I first joined AHDB in 2017, environmental concerns were actually quite low down the pecking order, and actually those have really kind of lifted up. And also welfare's kind of been there as a steady thing. But it's interesting that although people talk about environment and they talk about animal welfare, when you kind of sit with people in a focus group and really kind of dig into what's really important for them, they will start to talk about health quite a lot, actually, because people are most concerned with what affects their own personal health and also the health of their family. And you can see on the right hand side some of the concerns that people have around health and around dairy. And just continuing to think about health's also and important to think about with dairy. I think if we go back kind of 20-30 years, everybody knew that dairy was really good for you. You know, we were all brought up on milk from being tiny. We knew that dairy and calcium contained calcium, which was great for bones and great for health, and that was almost a given. But I think in the last few years, that recognition about how good dairy is for you is starting to erode, and it's something that we need to be mindful of and actually talk to consumers about in perhaps a bit of a different way. So this data here is just looking at how associated dairy is with health, and so looking at every time people consume a dairy product, how much of that is for health reasons, how much is for practicality, how much is for enjoyment. So about 28% of dairy occasions are consumed for health reasons, and that's down a bit versus total food. So if you look at the average food product, that's more like 35%. So dairy isn't as associated with health as some food products, and that is dipping a little bit over time. So this is just looking from 2017 down to 2021, and it's not a huge movement, more so in some categories. So for yogurt drinks, for example, where there's concerns about sugar and things like that, and yogurt as well, but it's something to be mindful of and something that we need to think about in the future. And the other thing that I was mentioning was environment, and I think this is probably no surprise. We've seen lots of negative news about cattle and methane and the environment, and dairy farming is increasingly seen as problematic for the environment amongst consumers. So we've been tracking this metric back from 2015. So dairy farming is good for the countryside, and that has dropped quite considerably from 74% down to 42%, and similarly the sense of the dairy industry being environmentally responsible. So again, there's a real story that needs to be told to kind of balance that debate. And also probably no new news to a lot of you, but you know, we continually see these negative campaigns run by pressure groups such as PETA, etc., just casting aspersions around the welfare credentials of dairy and about kind of the ethics of dairy production. And this is something that is landing with some consumers as well. So again, it's something that we do need to reassure consumers about. And this is really in the face of dairy alternatives, and this is just looking at the growth of dairy alternatives in volume terms back from 2017. You can see that in terms of number of litres, that's pretty much doubled. However, don't be too alarmed, it is from a low base. It still makes up only, I think, 5% of the total dairy sector. But again, it's something that we need to be mindful of, because where people are doubting, you know, animal welfare, the environment and health, this is when they might start to think about turning to alternatives. And just looking at alternatives, however, I think you might have seen in The Guardian, there was some really dubious data being published by George Monbiot around, I think he said, a third of households, according to Mintel, a third of people now consume dairy alternatives. That's not actually true. If you just look at household penetration, 1 in 3 might have bought an alternative over the course of a year, but 98% of those households will have bought cow's milk. So it is not a wholesale switching away by any means. And if you just look at the past 4 weeks, which would be, you know, looking at, am I purchasing this product in a regular basis, that then goes to 93% for cow's milk, and it's down at 16% for dairy alternatives. So they're not quite as big as they're being made out to be in the media, but obviously there's a lot of hype around that. So that all seems a little bit doom and gloom, but one of the great things that we have as an industry, and one of the great assets that we have, are our farmers. So when we've done a study looking at the trustworthiness of different parts of the supply chain, so from farmers to food processors to supermarkets, farmers are by far the most trusted part of the supply chain. And the reason why they are the most trusted group is that they have these shared values with consumers, that consumers see farmers as experts at what they're doing, but they also recognise that they care about animals more so than any other part of the supply chain, and that they also care about the planet, again, more so than any other part of the supply chain. So there is a real role for farmers to play there, because although farmers are the most trusted and the values they have really resonate with consumers, they are also the group that consumers hear from the least. So there's a real role for farming and farmers to be able to communicate what they're doing to help drive some of this reassurance with consumers as well. So how can communications help this kind of state of affairs? So there are some real key roles, obviously, that we need to do. So we need to improve the reputation of dairy primarily on both health, environment and welfare standards. So we really need to deliver the key health benefits. And one area that we've kind of been looking at is B12, because vitamin B12 is something that you can only get naturally from animal products, so from dairy products and from meat. You can't get it from plant-based products without fortification. So that's kind of a point of difference, and it's resonated really well with consumers. Also to communicate our environmental efficiency, because producing dairy in the UK is more efficient than producing versus overseas, and also reiterating the UK's world-leading animal welfare standards as well, all with the goal to kind of reduce the reducers and limit that switching to alternatives. So it's not necessarily about getting people to consume loads and loads more dairy, but it's about getting people to recognise the important role that dairy products play in their diets. So I just wanted to share kind of some of the campaign work that my colleagues in the market development team have been leading on, both past, present and future. So hopefully you will have seen some of these past campaigns that we've run in the past. So first of all, the Department of Dairy Related Scrumptious Affairs, which really came back to kind of grow the relevance to people and remind people of that, all that love that they have for dairy. You know, when you sit with consumers and actually talk to them about how they like to consume dairy, and, you know, get them talking about kind of what they enjoy, and, you know, get them talking about cheese on toast, for example. There is so much love out there for dairy products. They just need reminding of it. So the department was kind of all about that, to counteract some of those trends. So that ran on VOD, on out of home, social and cinema, and it was aimed particularly with millennial parents. The second campaign on the right hand side was the Milk Your Moments campaign, which was really a tactical campaign which came out of obviously when the pandemic hit and all the food service closures hit, and there were all those heartbreaking images of people having to throw away milk. It was really aimed at plugging that gap of where we've got too much milk kind of coming in without a home to go to boost kind of consumption in the home. And that worked really, really well, actually. So that drove an estimated 11.2 million additional litres of liquid milk sales. We got an additional 212,000 consumers to buy milk who would not have already done so, which resulted in an extra 6.6 million incremental sales. And it also drove a shift in attitude towards dairy within our target audience, with more people claiming that dairy was an important part of their diet and perfect for a growing family as a result. So that kind of brings us on to 2021, sorry, and this was the pilot campaign of We Eat Balance, where we were promoting dairy as part of a healthy, sustainable diet. So what we wanted to do was to kind of balance the debate, if you like, and run with 3 key messages, one of which is the message about B12. So meat and milk contain vitamin B12, an essential nutrient not naturally present in foods of plant origin. The second was about sustainability, that red meat and dairy from Britain is amongst the most sustainable in the world. And the third was around world-class food and farming standards. So that ran kind of at the same time as Veganuary, to really try and go head to head with some of those negative messages, and really balance out that debate with consumers. And we saw some very strong results, reached a lot of consumers, so 80 million impressions on social media. We ran a national TV campaign, which reached 2.5 million people. We reached 6 million people with print adverts, and we also we're very lucky that we got a lot of the retailers behind the campaign as well, particularly the Co-op. The Co-op were printing on-pack messages and links to the campaign as well. We ran in the Daily Mail, and also the Guardian. We particularly chose the Guardian because we know that Guardian readers are most likely to be cutting out or reducing their dairy consumption, and it made a real positive difference to how people felt about dairy. So we saw an uplift in dairy being associated with health, with naturalness, with being produced sustainably, and we also saw a growth in purchase intent as well, and knowing that at the same time as we were on air, we'd also got Veganuary kind of talking us down. That's a really positive story. So because last year was so successful, we will be running again in 2021, going into 2022 with a new £1.5 million campaign. So in September and October, that will be on social, digital, print and retail, and that will be focusing on some of those environmentally sort of sustainability messages, really in the run up to the UN Climate Change Conference for COP26, which has been hosted in the UK, because we know there'll be a lot of focus on sustainability over that period. And then in January and February, we'll be going on air with a new advert, with a new TV ad, which will be backed up with social, digital, print and retail. And again, we're going to be going out with that in January and February, which coincides again with Veganuary, but it's also the time of year when consumers are thinking about their diet, thinking about what they're eating, and actually going out with a kind of health related message at that time should be really powerful. So the goals are really to increase awareness, to give people the confidence to kind of back up their positive choices, and to really give people that nudge that you know they can continue to buy the foods that they enjoy and that they love. And that should give us millions of opportunities to influence our consumers. So the social media activity we have planned should generate nearly 40 million impressions, 4 million impressions in the Mail Online, 7 weeks worth of full page print ads in the Guardian. And again, we've got the retailers on board, giving us that final nudge to buy. So in the Co-op, we all have vinyls on the chillers and also on pack again. Sainsbury's are running with fins, Tesco have online banners, Asda will have shelf barcodes, and again online banners, and online banners in Waitrose. So how can you get involved? We'd really like to see more farmers getting involved. We know, and I've just shared that data with you around how trusted farmers are and actually how well received their messages are for consumers. And we are looking for farmer ambassadors to help amplify those messages with your own kind of social media followings, and just everyday farmers as well. So for more information, you can go to ahdb.org.uk We Eat Balanced, and do please get in contact if you want to know how you can help. And just kind of a bit of a final plug for my team. We are running a series of consumer insight webinars. The dairy one's going to be on the 4th of November, and then the consumer landscape one, which is looking at kind of some of all those reputational issues, will be on the 25th of November. So please do go to the website below and sign up, because it's completely free, and we'd love to see you there. And just finally, if you would like to sign up to our newsletter, then please do, and I'm sure we can circulate these afterwards. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to Rachel.
2 seconds. Got now to do the full screen. Here we go. So I need to go back. How do I get back to? I can't see you all on Zoom. Where are we all? There we are. Right, can you see me?
Yes, we can.
This has all changed since yesterday, so just bear with me. I now can't see you. View, full gallery, that's what I want now, I don't. So can you see my screen? No. Can anybody confirm they can see my PowerPoint?
I can't see it, Rachel. Have you gone to the bottom to the share screen bit?
Yeah, I'll share that one. Sorry. So much for practicing. Is that
there
better?
we go. We've got it. Brilliant.
We're on. Right.
Thank you.
Apologies. So thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Morning, Karen, Madam Chairman. Thank you for that glowing introduction. I wondered who you were talking about at one point, and to all the other speakers and delegates. I'm feeling quite nervous at the moment. I'm sure my voice will calm down in a minute, but I have Tim Smith from the Eden Project very much in my mind at the moment. He was heard to say that we should never get out of our comfort zone because it's uncomfortable, whereas today I am stretching my comfort zone. So here we go. So my name is Rachel Knowles. I'm farming in partnership with my husband Chris down just 1.5 miles out of St Ives in West Cornwall. I'm going to divide my talk into 3 areas. The first is an introduction to our farm. I'll tell you a little bit about our marketing journey, and the small print definitely says this isn't necessarily the right thing, but this is what we've done. And also I'll finish off with a few opportunities to share with you all. That is a view of Trink Farm. It happened to be taken when we had a farm walk, hence all the cars, they aren't normally there, but it just does show you a good indication of the farm. We run a very simple system. We've got 350 crossbred cows. We've been milking once a day for 2 full years, going into our 3rd now, and we are spring block calving. However, this is changing slightly now. We have, next year, we're going to have our first a small group of summer calvers, because I'll call it for today, my milk sales, so the Trink Dairy milk sales, to keep us going through January and February. Last year, we nearly struggled to keep up with demand because so many of our cows were dry. So we are proud Arla farmers, very proud Arla farmers, and also HSBC customers, you'll be pleased to know. So this is a typical view of our cows. You can see St Michael's Mount in the background there. In the previous slide, you could see St Ives Bay on the top of the, so we are right between the 2 coasts. Our cows are out grazing for, on average, 270 days of the year, which is around 9 months. We're in a very opportune climate for growing grass. Because we're surrounded by so much sea, our temperatures rarely drop below 5 degrees. We may have a frost once a year. Last year was an exception. Last winter we had 5 frosts, I think. So when talking to my sister up in Lincolnshire, she scrapes her windscreen, used to scrape it every morning. So we're a very moderate climate, which lends itself to growing grass. And we're pleased to say that over 90% of our cow's diet is from homegrown grass. So the Trink Dairy story started at the beginning of 2016. When Chris and I were organising a farm study tour to the Isles of Scilly. I'm not sure how many of you have been there, but it's a set of very small islands, 20 miles off Land's End down here in Cornwall. And we decided it was imperative that we took our group to the only dairy farm on the Scillies. We've since got to know them extremely well. We stay with them and they stay with us. But at the time they milked 6 dairy cows. So compared to our 300, 350, it just seemed like a different world. And I asked how they coped. And basically they said it's supply and demand. I learned this at college and university, but I don't think I really understood it until I saw it in practice. But it made me come home and think. People were asking how to buy our milk. So in the autumn of 2016, I started selling pasteurized milk from our house as an honesty fridge. And for 1 week in September, I left Cornwall on a Monday morning. I visited various farms who are processing milk, selling raw milk, using vending machines. I visited people who sold to vending machines. And the middle of that week, I went to the first Women in Dairy conference in Worcester. So I had a great week away. I'm very grateful to anybody who helped me on my journey. And if you're listening now, thank you very much. But it made me come back and realize the important things to keep things simple, and also be obsessive on quality. I had a phone call from a local grant funding body who pushed me to apply for grant funding. I submitted the application, and in 2017 we heard that we were successful in that application, which contributed virtually 50% towards our new facilities. So May, we opened up to sell milk direct from the farm, and by July we'd managed to start delivering milk to retail customers. I have to say those few months are possibly the worst, well, they were the worst months of my life. I won't go into too much detail, but for those who know, you know. But I've also signed a confidentiality agreement regarding my nightmare of a journey with vending machines. So sadly, I can't share too much of that now. So, but moving on to a more positive note, this is basically the picture on the left is how I started. It was a very small Honesty fridge in our garage just outside the house. I used to go and get the milk in the morning, bring it down, pasteurize it, put it in the fridge. And the whole process to pasteurize 15 litres took me 4 hours. I can't quite believe I managed it now, but pleased to say that we've moved on. So the picture on the right is our reliable vending machine. We know him as Bertie, for one of the guys who gave me the inspiration to do this project. And I can't quite believe where we've come to and from. We started in the autumn of 2016 selling raw milk, pasteurized, semi-skimmed and clotted cream. But I soon learnt to keep things simple, that it's not just about putting milk in a bottle and cream in a pot. I was very much on my own because Chris and I decided that his strengths are out on the farm and this was my little project. Possibly it's gone out of hand because we now have well over 100 customers we deliver to every day, and many more who come up to the farm. So I said that we are Arla farmers. We've been very lucky to be given permission to sell up to 10% of our milk direct to the customers. We're not quite at that yet, but our facilities probably need a bit of expanding. With 3 daughters in the pipeline, 2 agricultural college and 1 still at senior school, who knows what the future will bring. But at the moment, I'm determined not to change too much because it's going very well. We pasteurize 3 days a week. Typically this summer, we've had to go up to 4 days. We've got an inline pasteurizer. And basically you can see here, Sarah on the right is filling the bottles by hand. And then the other 2 are helping lid and put the use by on, put them in the chiller. We, even during pasteurizing, our partners who deliver our milk sometimes come and collect it. So our milk is ready to sell the second it comes off the pasteurizer, because it comes off at around 3 degrees. This system is very simple. We fill 10-litre buckets. We fill 2-litre bottles, 1 litre and 500. We are now lucky enough to work with 3 local family businesses. Basically, the essence of this is that they will collect the milk from us as soon as we've pasteurized it. So for example, now my dairy fairies are pasteurizing. By about 11 o'clock, Mounts Bay Dairy will have collected all their milk. They will take that back to deliver it out on Thursday and Friday morning, and then Friday they will come back again for the milk for the weekend and Monday morning. Mounts Bay Dairy cover all our catering, retail and shops in the western half of Cornwall, basically Wadebridge, Truro and down. Continental Fruits do the eastern half of Cornwall. We're new to working with them, so we can now regularly cover Cornwall every day of the week, or certainly 6 days of the week. And Kig and Case deliver to all our farm shops in the area. So yeah. So the basic difference between our milk to what is available in the supermarkets, it's guaranteed from Trink Farm, crossbred cows, majority grass-fed. It's a very high constituent value milk, which people seem to enjoy. So much for semi-skimmed and skimmed. You know, we are having, our customers are increasing, so they're obviously enjoying the milk. It's a highly perishable product, so we have to treat it very gently. If you grew strawberries, you would treat them gently and get them out as fresh as possible, and that's what we aim to do with our milk. And so far so good. And it's definitely not homogenized and definitely not standardized. There is absolutely no point in homogenizing milk, as far as we can see. If you like it homogenized, then give it a shake before you use it. So that's the basic differences in our milk. So our marketing journey, well, like the whole project really started with a very steep learning curve. I'd almost go as far to say it was vertical. And I think it's very important, and probably a lot of these lessons apply to everybody in business, but you must work with the best. My husband Chris famously said, "We don't need a logo. Surely you can do something yourself." In our grant application, I put in a claim for just over £6,000, I think it was, for basically branding, creating a logo, writing our website, and doing road signs. At the time, I thought it was astronomical, but with 50% funding, it made it more we could handle it. But without a doubt, it was the best thing we ever did. Our logo, we're very, very proud of. You'll see it in a minute. Yeah, it's really helped us. The only possible thing is some people think it's possibly a bit too professional and doesn't reflect the fact that we're just sort of two of us with our fantastic team on the farm, and a family farm. So, but there we go. I'm happy with that. I'd rather have quality. We engage with the public in many ways. We tell our story and we try and sell our milk. But we think it's very important to educate people on how milk is produced. So our team on the farm are fantastic at helping. We call them the cowboys and the dairy fairies, because we get so many visitors to the farm. You can come and watch the cows being milked. They're often talking to them and ask questions. So we really do take the time. Social media is invaluable. I was horrified to understand how much advertising in local magazines cost. So social media you have to engage with, and we couldn't have done it without it. It takes a lot of time, but I've got a slide in a little bit which will give you tips on how for it not to take over your life, because it is very easy to do that. We've got a website which apparently is critical. We've updated it since. I thought once we drew up our website in 2017 that would be the end of it, but no, we reviewed it totally last January, and very, very glad we did. It was in time for COVID, which I'll tell you about in a minute. Open Farm Sunday we've got involved with. We haven't done in the last couple of years for various family reasons. But we also do group visits and talks. We've always been open to school groups, and we are now working with FarmLink, which I will talk about in a minute. I help run a new community shop that opened up in COVID, and we regularly write in the village newsletter to keep everybody informed. And it's surprising, since we've been doing that, how many people come and ask us questions and say, "Oh, I didn't know you had to do that," issues like that. A farmers market, again, we held a farmers market. We started it last summer during COVID, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. We basically felt like we were growing a little bit out of control, and we didn't know what we didn't have a marketing strategy. So we went to a local marketing consultant, and to cut a very long story short, she asked us to find out who is our Janet, who is our customer that we're aiming at. we did work it out, but we also worked out that we believe that everyone is a potential customer. We have to constantly review and reposition ourselves, but we didn't want to burn our bridges because like Susie was saying just now, there's a lot of people that go in and out of dairy. They have food fads, they become vegan, they become vegetarian. It's a constantly changing cycle. And I've also got vegans down there. We've had quite a few people comment that they are now not vegans and they will only drink our milk because they can come and see the cows. When they drive around the area, they can see the cows out grazing. So we are good for our money. We do what we say. They are out grazing most of the year. But also one of our a very strong vegan customer and environmentalist, she is our customer because her daughter is now 2 years old and she's insisting on a healthy, balanced diet for her daughter and will only buy her Trink milk. The mum doesn't buy it yet, but who knows? We might get there. As I said, we visited our marketing consultant. We had meetings in November and January, the January of 2020, just before COVID, and we decided that to share with our customers where you could buy milk. So we introduced this where to buy page on our website. You're all very welcome to visit it and play around with it. You can basically do a search on your area or an area you're going to visit. So if you particularly want the best coffee, you might tick takeaway or cafe, put in the postcode where you're visiting and click search, and it will come up with points on the map. So there's takeaways, wholesale deliveries, so obviously the 3 wholesale deliverers. That cuts down on quite a few customer inquiries, farm shops, cafes, and also with COVID, I could add a section of home deliveries and click and collect. It's a great map. I'm very proud of it, and it is used a lot. Right, KISS and measure and monitor. That I should have probably rephrased that. KISS meaning keep it simple, stupid. We've learnt a lot through our journey through life, Chris and I, and our wealth creation course we attended in Ireland in 2008. And the discussion groups that we're involved in on the farm. Keep it simple, learn to say no, continually try and simplify it. Life is complicated enough. But measure and monitor is another one that we were always taught through our discussion groups. Constantly review it, but it's a very, very difficult thing to measure. I could spend an awful lot of time on it. So I don't totally agree with that for our social media, certainly. As a very rough rule of thumb, I reckon that of the insights, which is basically the people who view our posts, comment, like or share, less than 1% will act on it. For example, if you say you've got a farmer's market coming up and you get 1,000 likes, we might get 100 people come up to the farmer's market. However, saying that, never underestimate the insights. Basically, there's a lot of people who won't comment, like or share on social media, but they will talk about it. And we're all very good at that. The Magic 10, this is for social media, and this has been a godsend to me. It's common sense, but very, very useful. Don't spend all your time on social media. Don't keep looking at it. Maybe sit down once a day, whether you're on the loo or just having a cup of tea. But basically, it's every day, spend 10 minutes on social media, like 10 things, share 10 things, and comment on various posts. I found this very manageable in terms of my time, but also I can do that and I'm not having to pay someone to do it. Whether it's the right or wrong thing, remains to be seen, but our sales are continuing to rise. So if that's anything to go by, we're pleased with it. So as a summary for our marketing, keep it very simple and clear. I'll show you some examples in a minute. Be confident in what you're saying. We only ever talk about our farm and our milk. We hardly ever talk about the dairy industry as a rule. I don't feel qualified to do that. And I want to keep our story about Trink and what we do. Be concise and accurate. I'm continually double checking, especially farm facts with Chris. Be obsessive on the facts, but also on your spelling, punctuation, make it look clear and professional. And very importantly, we want to be ourselves. People's attention spans are very, very short. Having 3 teenage daughters, it's quite frightening to see. If they show you their phone, they flick through things so fast. Sometimes I can hardly focus on the pictures, let alone read the words. So never underestimate this. I like to, this is just an example of our Instagram page. The screen on the left, all of those pictures are what I've posted. So there's a nice range of things that are happening on the farm. So there's cheese, which is being made from our milk. Just different things that have been happening. But on the right is where other customers, whether they're shops or producers or direct customers, what they do with our milk. And I never ceases to amaze me how what people can do with our milk. The latte art is to die for, and it makes fantastic coffee. So tag. People look at pictures, they don't read much anymore. Our social media, we try and keep it simple, not too regular. We don't want to bombard people, but it also takes time. So recently we were very proud to host Her Royal Highness Princess Anne on the farm. She actually spent an hour and a half with us, which was a once in a lifetime opportunity. An amazing lady. She really knows her stuff, for any of you who've been lucky enough to meet her. So yeah, keeping it real. So there's a picture of her with our cows. We constantly want to assure customers of the quality of our milk. We've got the 5-star rating for the environmental health as well. We share this. This is another post of our where to buy page. We're trying to make our customers' lives easier. Everybody's busy. You will all be busy. If we can make their life our milk, hopefully they will make it to buying our milk. If not, talk to a friend. Yes, and also show people the benefits of your product. I can't do latte art. My coffee isn't to die for. So I work very closely with a lot of our baristas. And this, photos like this are just really, really exciting. This wasn't done by us. This was done by one of our baristas at their coffee shop. And then finally, just show them something a bit different. We grab any opportunity that we can. This is when we took Doris to our beach. This is literally only a mile away from home. We were approached by Kelly's Ice Cream, which is a local ice cream company in Cornwall, to see if we could take a cow to the beach. Unfortunately, other farmers either didn't want to or couldn't because of TB restrictions. So yeah, very, very exciting day taking Doris to the beach. And this is after about 3 hours of being on shoot. She was walking back along the beach to be loaded to come home. So and then just a few indirect marketing things and opportunities that we've taken. So in 2019, we started working with FarmLink. But before that, we always invited schools up to the farm. In fact, we insisted that our children's schools and classes came up to the farm, not every year, possibly every other year. So we've always been very open to visitors. But in September 2019, we became a host farm for FarmLink down here in Cornwall. At the moment, we're the only one, but if anybody else wants to join in, they are open to not only dairy farms, any kind of farm. Basically, we work with FarmLink and we encourage children onto the farm, and we also go into the classroom to talk to them. Unfortunately, there's such a huge gulf between children's knowledge that we're trying to help out where we can. So 2019, we had 2 years before that, sorry, it's 2018, we had over 500 visitors that came in groups to the farm. That's not including individual customers. We enjoy sharing our story. We've got a nice, simple system, and we've got we've got modern facilities, so it's easy to share children around, show children around. But you're not only educating the children, you're educating the teachers, the parents that come with you, and the grandparents. And the number of families that have come back up to watch the milking after their group visit is great, because we're only milking once a day, which is in the morning between 6:30 and 8:30. So you can hardly ever get groups here early enough to see the milking. But that is a great way to encourage them. So our farmers markets started in 2020. We had various local friends who couldn't sell anything because everywhere was stopped. There was no visitors in the area. So as you can see, there's a big chunk of concrete outside the dairy. So we set up a few market stalls and had a weekly farmers market. It was so popular last year that we ran it again this year. It was good for us. It was very sociable. It was a good excuse to see people. It was always in the open air. And if it was dodgy, windy or wet weather, we'd go around the back of the building. We've got a big shed. Obviously, they're not used in the summer months, so that was still plenty of fresh air. We've stopped them at the end of August, and we'll see if we do them again next year. But unfortunately, as much as our individual customers aren't dropping, I think customers are going back to the supermarkets. They're busier, they haven't got the time. So it was not quite as busy this year as it was the year before. We've welcomed groups like this, the U3A. Basically, they're an older group. U3A is the University of the Third Age. They were very nervous about meeting up indoors. So to some of our friends, we suggested they come up to the yard. So they basically had their meeting on our feed passage. The shed was right behind them if it was bad weather, but their 3 meetings they managed to have in glorious sunshine, and it was lovely to see. I wasn't involved in the meetings, they were their own, but every time they would ask me questions afterwards, and certainly buy milk. So just through that, we've got a few new customers, which is great. A few nominations and awards. I feel silly now talking to myself about these, but we're very proud of what we've achieved over the last, it's 5 years now. And next week we've got another award ceremony. So quite excited to actually be going somewhere and dressing up. So wish us luck. So keep it simple is what we stress all the time. There is a life beyond selling milk and running a farm, which we're trying to keep that balance. But we do enjoy sharing our story. Nearly the last slide. This was Doris. Like I said, keep time for fun and opportunities. Which we really enjoyed. That day, the whole farm team went down to the beach. We had pasties and drinks whilst Doris was being filmed. Finally, it's been a fabulous opportunity for me and Chris to work together. It's brought us even closer together, because he now wakes up in the morning knowing that people actually appreciate what he did. When milk was collected by the milk tanker, it's not the tanker driver's fault at all, but we were very hardly ever made to feel grateful for our milk. So to go out, this was a trip to Padstow. We went to one of the Steins, it's a new Steins coffee shop. So Rick Stein's son, Charlie, has opened a coffee shop, and we are proud to supply him with our milk. So it was a fantastic coffee. I'm not just saying it, but obviously it was, you know, momentous day for us. And also, customers love to meet the farmer. If I go out on my own, they're very interested to know what we do. But when Chris comes with me, the focus of conversation is always on him and what he does, which is very important to share our story. So I think that's it. I'm obviously open for questions. Thank you all for listening, and again, thank you very much to everybody who helped me those 5 years ago. I couldn't have done it without you all. Thank you.
Hello everybody. So thank you to both Susie and Rachel for some informative talks. It gives me a great pleasure as a Women in Dairy Steering Committee member, as well as the Somerset Group facilitator, to be a part of this conference today. However, time has run away with us slightly, so there's very, very limited time for Q&A, as I have to also announce the winner of the first Twitter section. So I think sort of in essence of the questions that were really coming through was sort of really trying to understand how farmers can have confidence to speak up, perhaps against some of the minority views with loud voices that are perhaps against the dairy industry, and actually where to get those resources. So I don't know, Susie, if you can sort of maybe start tell us a bit about that, please.
Yeah, no, I'll try and bomb through it. There are some good resources, and I've put a link in the chat actually, because there's a section on the website with some of those tips for dealing with negative comments on social media, because we all have them, and it's so easy to get kind of pulled in and you feel personally attacked, and it can come out, you know, in quite in a negative way if you're not careful. But I think it's kind of thinking about who you're speaking to, because there are some people we are just not going to change their minds, and it can be just counterproductive, and in some cases you're just better not to engage. And you have to bear in mind, you're probably not going to influence the person you'd be arguing with, but you are going to potentially influence the kind of onlookers. So check whether you think you're going to engage, be polite always, don't overreact, and know when to walk away. And also it's a good opportunity to block the very negative people, because you don't need that in your life, and we don't necessarily need to be arguing with those people. Let's focus on the people we can positively influence and give those messages to, because there's an awful lot of people out there who want to hear from farmers and who want to hear those positive messages. So let's focus on that audience.
Thank you, Susie. Rachel, have you got any comment to make on?
Yeah, just very quickly. Chris was very anti all social media back in 2016, and so when I first showed him our Facebook page and our cover picture, he was sort of rolling his eyes a bit. And unfortunately, I was very proud of it, but within 3 days we got hit by vegans, and it was actually very, very stressful, because I'm a very simple person. I just wanted to share our story and sell our milk. We answered all their questions directly, but in the end they were proper keyboard warriors. It got out of hand. So we answered their questions, but what I then finished by saying was, if please come and see our cows and calves, you're very welcome to come to the farm. That instantly put her quiet. She was a local lady. It wasn't even someone from Morat, it was a local lady. So always welcome them to the farm. Get them to bring the wellies and a coat, but always welcome to the farm. And we kept it very professional from Trink Dairy's point of view, but we had lots and lots of local people fire in their experiences and support farming in general. So yeah, I have also known to block people.
Well, thank you both to both you, Rachel and Susie. It's great to hear from both of you. As I say, I will just have to sort of cut short the Q&A session, but thank you ever so much. Sort of moving swiftly on, Karen mentioned right at the start that we were going to be doing a best tweet during each session, and it gives me a pleasure to say that there was a great opening tweet by Carrie Dunford, which was all about the cow is our hero, an amazing photo as well, alongside that of her cows. So well done, Carrie, winner of the first bundle of goodies for the Twitter competition. But do remember, everybody, keep using that hashtag, which is hashtag WIDConf21. Superb. Thank you ever so much.